although I do miss the UK, and I'll be slightly jealous that I didn't get to do all three peaks, just two of them. So
Oh, really? Which one didn't you do?
I did Ben Nevis and I did Snowdon, but I didn't get to do the other. I was going to do that with my brother-in-law a long time ago, but we never got around to it before he passed, unfortunately.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we will toast to you at the top of Scarfell Pike.
Fantastic.
And to him.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm not sure what we'll toast with because I don't drink either, but we'll toast with a smoothie.
We're very matched then. So you should definitely come over because I don't drink. We're vegan. It's all going to be very, very, very healthy.
There you go.
So have you been able to get any more actors involved with the conservation work that you do?
That's a great question. I mean, the direct answer is no, probably. I mean, I do have support from actors, and there are a lot of actor friends who I actually know through conservation rather than through having worked with them as an actor. People like Peter Egan, Rula Lenska, who already play a big part in animal conservation. The thing about a cause is that, it really has to come from the heart. And so, and this is, I guess, a good time to mention why a lot of people, I think, focus on human beings. We've discussed that in a few different examples today. There is a far smaller number of people on Earth focused on animals than there are on humans. The proportion of all charitable donations that go to animal charities is minute in comparison to, and of course there's an important human charitable contribution as well. Of course, I'm not diminishing that one bit, but it's. So I've worked with actors who have their own cause, and a lot of those causes are human causes. Breast cancer awareness, for example, or some of my dear friends in the acting world have had personal experience with health issues with those related to them very closely, and of course, therefore, are dedicating their time and effort to endorsing and supporting those kinds of charities. And I get that. I do get that. And so, where I've had support from actors, I can't say that I've been able to collect actors who now support the animal cause, because the thing is, if it's in them, and they'd be doing it without my encouragement. One thing that does concern me slightly, and I'm not picking out specific names, but I do think it's kind of a shame and sometimes a bit disturbing how some, especially big names, don't have a cause. I don't care what it is, have one. You've got people like Ricky Gervais, I absolutely adore, because he's got an enormous global following, and he uses his platform to do good. And it's very easy to do that, when you're at that kind of level. And there's plenty of those at that kind of level and below. But for me, the higher up the pecking order you get, the more of a profile you have, the more you kind of have a responsibility to do some good with it.
Yeah.
Well, not kind of. You absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, you absolutely have a responsibility to do something with it, because someone who's high profile can literally snap their fingers and make 10,000 people behave in a different way that day.
Yeah.
How could you not use that for good? And plenty don't. And so that's a separate issue. I haven't got any actor friends who I've had any personal connection with who have just got, flat out refused. I haven't asked people to get involved in the animal cause other than, hey, come climb a mountain with me. And they will. A lot of them will. And they'll support it in that way. But in terms of actually being an ambassador for a cause, I think that has to come from the heart. And it's a very personal thing.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely.
It is indeed. So you were talking at the beginning about a documentary, and I don't want to miss knowing a little bit more about it, if you can talk about it.
Yeah, I can. It's called Food for Thought. And it's exploring the driving forces behind the global vegan phenomenon. Yep. And so again, this just comes back to that point I made about wanting to make use of, whether it's acting or filmmaking, wanting to make use of that medium to serve a purpose, for it to be meaningful in some way. And so I along with my buddy Giles, who actually, he and I know each other from having acted opposite each other in a film many, many years ago. And Giles has kind of taken the more director route and I'm a director route, not direct route. He's now a film director, more than an actor, and I've sort of stuck with the acting, and more recently got into the filmmaking, and so he's a vegan as well. We both really care about the cause, and we decided if we're going to put our time and effort and resources into creating a project, we could make a ghost story, and it will probably sell, and we'd probably make more money from doing it. But again, kind of like the bubble, the echo chamber we talked about. What difference does it? Even if I won an Oscar, aside from the fact my platform would grow, even if we made the best horror film in the history of mankind, what have I done? What have I actually done? Unless, of course, you do that and then become, world famous, and then use that platform for good. Of course, that serves a purpose too. But we just decided we're going to do something meaningful, and we've taken on this project to just explore what's causing it, because as we know, the vegan movement is growing. It's the fastest growing lifestyle choice in the world over the last few years. It's a very different story now, and in the last 3 or 4 years than it ever has been before. It's easier now to go vegan than it ever has been. It's more mainstream, more widespread, more accepted. It's much less sort of it used to be that sort of that quirky tree hugger group, people who all didn't shave and wore a lot of purple and dark green. And it's not
we
that
used to be the
anymore.
pariahs at the party.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and funny enough, the name Food for Thought itself actually does a fairly good job of describing what we want to achieve, because it's very important not to judge people, not to vilify. We're human, and humans are susceptible to human nature, which is even if someone agrees with you, if you get up in someone's face and tell them how to behave, they're not going to take it terribly well. Yeah. So if we kind of made a judgmental, preachy film about the virtues of veganism, we would with that point you made about we're preaching to the converted already. The point you made about if you make it, you post something on social media and 1,000 people agree with you, who already agree with you. The only people who are going to watch a film yelling about the virtues of veganism are vegans who agree with me. I need meat eaters to see this. I need people who are on the cusp, people who are thinking about making a change, but still think that vegans are weirdos. And then we need to show them that they're not. We've got some really, really wonderful, normal people who are vegan, like you guys and like me, hopefully. And that we were trying to figure a name for it. All we knew, we wanted to keep the word vegan out the title, because that's a good reason for people not to watch it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. So in the conversation, I said, we've just got to find something that just tells people, it's just, we're not judging, we're not preaching, we just want to give them food for thought. And as I said it, I was like, it's food for thought. We just want to give them food for thought. And of course it's a play on words because it's all about food, but it's designed to do just that. It's not judgy. It's just saying, here's some stuff to think about. Isn't this interesting? And what's really interesting about it is we have people, for example, like Mate Remats. Remats Automobile is basically the Croatian Tesla. Right. And this car is spectacular.
Is this the Rimac that was it Richard Hammond crashed one at one point, did he? Is that the one?
Wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. It's lightning fast. It's probably the fastest car on the roads. It's a beautiful looking car. It's incredible. Looks like a supercar, but it's 100% electric. Really young guy who created the company. Very, I think he's probably a genius. And he's the biggest employer in Croatia. Actually, I think he's got 400 and some people working for him, and that was 2 years ago when we were there interviewing him. But the point is this guy's business is to make and sell electric vehicles. That's what he does for a living. And in the documentary, we have him stating, electric vehicles are great, and of course, it's important to me, and I applaud anyone who has an electric vehicle, but you could have a far bigger, more significant impact on the planet just by reducing your meat consumption. This is a guy whose livelihood depends on him selling electric cars. And he said that unprompted by us. It was when he said it, I was like, oh, there's our trailer right there. Yeah. It's beautiful. He knows, this guy knows you can people applaud me. I have an electric car, so people get that, and they're like, "Oh, good for you." But if you say, there's still that slight stigma attached to veganism. It's much less so these days, as we just discussed. But it's still got that stigma attached to it, and we need to eradicate that. And because even things like Meatless Monday, if someone did Meatless Monday, they're probably having a more significant impact than if they ditched their petrol car and bought an electric.
Okay. Yeah. Indeed.
Just from one day a week. And of course, if everyone did that, that's 1 billion vegans. It's equivalent to 1 billion new vegans, because 7 point some billion of us on the planet. If everyone did Meatless Monday, that's 1 billion people gone vegan overnight. And I think that's the kind of inclusiveness and the kind of relatability, and just like, we want to be accepting of people. Everyone's on their journey. I'd love everyone to go vegan overnight. Of course I would. But I'm also a realist. I know that that's not going to happen. So we try. Yeah, food for thought. That's what that is.
That's fantastic.
So do you have a release date for that? Or...
We don't, because just like everything else, we got hit by the pandemic. So we're probably only a couple of months away from being finished. But those couple of months can't start yet.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We've been in that situation for a year. So we were ready to. We had a couple of people who I don't want to name, just because I'm not 100% sure that they can still be in the documentary, but a high-profile footballer and an Oscar-winning film director, both of whom we wanted to interview for the film, who had agreed to be in it. And both were abroad, and so that was out the window. The second the lockdown happened, we couldn't do it. And we don't absolutely need those interviews in the film. We have a finished product anyway. We've got the editing to do, so there's still more work to do, and there is still filming to do locally in the UK. But we're about 90%, 95% done in terms of the shoot. And then once we're in the can, we'll just finish the edit. And so I'd be amazed if we didn't have it out this year. Amazed and very disappointed.
Well, we're really looking forward to it. It'll be great to see it when it's out. Can you tell us a little bit about Noriko's voyage?
Oh yeah, I mean, Noriko's voyage is the brainchild of a writer producer called Max Robinson, and he's a guy who I've had the very great good fortune to cross paths with over the last few months. I don't know about you guys. I'm a very big believer in the universe conspiring in our favor when we have a positive intention and taking steps towards our goals and so on.
Yep.
And I actually did a series of, when the pandemic hit and Food for Thought had to go on hold, I created a live series called Food for Thought Live, in which I would invite sort of industry, conservation industry figureheads to come talk to me on a live Facebook and YouTube in parallel broadcast. Excuse me. And for example, Virginia McKenna and Will Travers, who we've talked about. And one of the other guests was Philip Limbury, who's the CEO of Compassion in World Farming. Yep. From having done that interview with him on Food for Thought Live, I was subsequently asked to do an interview with him for an event taking place in the UK, which was going to be a virtual event, as was everything else. So I did that interview, and it was just as me. It wasn't me acting. It was just me as Dan talking to Philip, asking him questions about birds in the UK and their habitat loss and stuff like that. And lo and behold, unbeknownst to me at the time, a chap called Max Robinson saw this interview, and I presume saw, much like we're seeing on the video, my name underneath, and it's Dan Richardson, actor. And I got a message, an email from Philip saying, "Hey, thanks again for the interview. See below, and if you're interested, feel free to contact him directly." And essentially, it was Max Robinson sending an email saying, "Hey, I've got this show I've written, this TV series. I've been looking for my lead male, and I just can't find him. And then I saw your interview, and that's him. That's my guy." Fantastic. Now, if I presented that as a strategy as to how I'm going to get my big break in the next TV show, I'd be locked up, and rightly so, because that's no strategy. But that's what happened, and it's not the first time that kind of crazy, wonderful, universal serendipity has happened to me. So Noriko's voyage is as I say, Max has written this, and it's an incredible story, loosely based, if you like, on a lead character called Noriko, who is loosely based, I should say, on Greta Thunberg, a type of person like Greta Thunberg, a young activist who cares.
Yeah,
very relevant to what I care about, and the role of that I was offered, and that I've played in the teaser that we shot in Switzerland last year, is of Noriko's father, George, and he's the antagonist. So if you imagine if Greta Thunberg's father was the CEO of, for example, a coal mining organization or something like that, or an oil company, you can imagine the conflict that would cause.
Yeah.
And so it's a political thriller based on a backdrop of everything that's important to me: human beings, impact on the planet, the animals, the environment, and this incredible story, and done in the most incredible, unique, compelling, entertaining way, which is a combination of live action and animation. They've got, I can't say too much because I know that they haven't gone public on much of this, but there will be, I dare say, in the not too distant future, some publicly available things that people can see. But it's going to be spectacular to look at. They've got some world-class animators involved, and more than anything, it's just the fact that it deals with everything, as I say, that matters to me. Everything we're discussing today, it deals with all of these things, and so, it's the perfect combination for me of any acting job will do, because of the fact that it facilitates me having a bigger platform, and that means I have a voice that's more widely heard and I can spread the message. But if that acting job happens to deal with subject matter that spreads the message itself, it's a win-win. And that's exactly what Noriko's Voyage does. I cannot wait to see it. I cannot wait to see what happens with it. I'm not sure what next steps are in terms of the production. What we shot last year is a kind of a teaser that will form part of the pitch deck, the pitch package to, I guess, the likes of Netflix and Apple TV and Amazon Prime and whoever else, who we hope would, of course, be looking at commissioning a series, and off we go. So fingers crossed it will be, and it's just what the world needs right now. It could not be more relevant right now with what's just happened in the last 12 months.
And it couldn't sound more perfect for you either, in terms of the alignment of personal and philosophical goals.
It's truly astonishing how aligned it is. And again, thinking about it would have been incredible anyway. If I had an agent, which I haven't had an agent for a few years, if I had an agent who put me forward for it, knowing that I was a big animal activist, you'd sort of be like, well, of course they put you forward for that. But this literally fell on my lap because of doing this work, because of not acting, but because of doing this work, because of this kind of thing we're doing today. Yeah. Just getting on with doing the conservation thing, and out of nowhere, the universe magicked Max Robinson in my direction, and now we're in Noriko's Voyage. It's wonderful.
It's fantastic. I mean, one of the things we have noticed is, and on no way near as grand a scale as you're doing things, but by doing this podcast, by speaking to lots and lots of people, all of a sudden some doors have opened up in other areas as well, where people have said, okay, look, we've got this product. It's incredibly sustainable. Would you like to come on board and have a look at it? Traditionally, we're both architects. And so it was a building panel, highly equal, using recycled plastics gathered from the ocean and stuff like that. And we're like, well, that sounds amazing. And then another one is got looking at a way to save a gigaton of CO2 from concrete production. And it's just like, this all sounds really, really exciting. So I completely concur with what you're saying. Somehow it opens up new doors when you put yourself out there.
It really does. And I think more than anything is, I think it happens all the time. I think that's half the trouble. People, if you can have this conversation with someone who disbelieves that concept, and they'd say, no, that's nonsense. I always have rotten luck. And you'd be like, but that's that same thing happening, that you're making my point for me. You're just doing it in a negative way. And I tend to think it does work in any direction, but it's much more powerful and much more immediate if the intentions are good and for the greater good, not just good intentions like I want to make £1 million. I mean, for the greater good. Because from my experience, and to such an extent that I don't even say I believe this anymore, I just know it to be true. It'd be like saying I believe in gravity. I've experienced it too many times in too many profound ways, like the one I just described to you, out of nowhere to get this incredible, perfect fit TV series that I couldn't have written it more perfectly. The scenario that unfolded was it's just incredible. And so my experience is, if you have a positive goal, which is for the greater good, take steps towards it, that puts you in proximity of the magic the universe has to offer, and it is infinitely more capable than we are in opening those doors, as you say, which we couldn't. All we do is railroad ourselves by thinking if we say it's going to happen and it's going to happen in this way, that we've then restricted the universe, because the universe will just go, yeah, fine, that's what you ordered, that's where we'll go. But I could have done it in a million different ways and just chill and let me do it for you, kind of thing. And that's the experience I've had. It's just magical, absolutely magical. I mean, you can't make it up. If it was in a movie, and that was the plot. Oh, this is how
you'd be disbelieving of it, wouldn't you?
You'd be like, that's ridiculous. That's not believable. That's ridiculous. But it happened.
So good. Brilliant. It is absolutely awesome. So all these things are happening, your life was a certain way in terms of, let's say, vegan and animal conservation and so forth like that. Was that in place before your acting, or has the two of them sort of come together and sort of met in this in this point of focus?
The love of animals was always there. It's one of my earliest childhood memories. My father, in particular, instilled that in me. He was way ahead of his time, and was a big animal lover. And so, as long as I can remember, I always really cared about animals. I was very, very sensitive about animals and their welfare and well-being. Acting really started late for me. I only got into acting, as I say, I think it was, what are we now, 2021, 15 years ago was when I took my first acting lesson. And then maybe 12 years ago was when I went full-time as an actor. So already into my 30s, late 30s, in fact. And I was, very late starting in that industry. But for example, when I was in my 20s, in my teens or my 20s or my 30s, before acting ever even occurred to me, if I ever did anything, like a sponsored event, it was always for the Whale and Dolphin Conservation Society, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, the RSPCA, whatever it may be. It was always animal related. It would have always been for animals. But so it was always there. I was always doing it, but to the extent that I could. That's the difference. Yeah. It was when the acting started to take off, and as I said, in particular, the Disney TV show, because of the fact that was quite high profile, and especially because the audience were kids. That's the kind of influence that animal charities want speaking on their behalf. Yeah. And nothing's more important to me. I'm more than willing and honored and happy to give all of my spare time to these incredibly meaningful causes, because essentially all I'm doing is I'm getting the opportunity to shine a bit of a spotlight on these unbelievable heroes who do incredible things, because that's what this is all about. That's what that's what 20 by 50 is all about. It's it's the means of doing it is to get a bunch of us to go climb some mountains, but the point of it is to shine a light on what Born Free does and save some lions' lives. I'm not saving lions' lives. I'm contributing to Born Free being able to do that, and I'd love to dedicate my life to being able to do that, and maybe one day I will. But at the moment, what it seems is that the best that I can do is try to make as much of an impact as I can as an actor or a filmmaker or both, and then use that platform to facilitate what really matters to me, which is where all the meaning comes from in my life, which is the animal conservation, the animal welfare. Yeah, it wouldn't matter if I never. I mean, I love acting and I want to keep doing it, but if I never acted another day in my life, how would that affect the world negatively or positively? It wouldn't make a blind bit of difference. Unless I happen to take on Noriko's Voyage and it turns into a huge success and people change their ways because of it. I agree that's important, but that's an indirect route to the same thing, which I could just spend my life doing that anyway. the meaning in my life comes from the animal conservation. So it's a kind of a long-winded answer to your question, Gareth, but ultimately it was the animal conservation was always there. I've just been given more opportunity to express it.
Yeah.
Now that I've become an actor.
Yeah. No, I agree with a lot of one of the points that we have often had a conversation between Anchor and myself about is the feeling of not being able to do enough, and understanding that you do as much as you can, but it still is not going to be enough, and you can't turn that dial enough. That is our issue, and that's something that we'll just keep pushing the envelope as much as we can, I guess.
It's such a good point you make, and it's it's like a blessing and a curse, isn't it? Because that's a real feeling. I mean, I've written about that as well. I used to do a lot more sort of just I would just write something that I felt at the time on Facebook, and I would just splash it out there just to let people know. I think it's important to say to people, like I said before, I feel the pain as well. I'm not just some kind of, pillar of strength where you'll 99 times out of 100, that's what you'll see of me, because I think it's important. We're trying to achieve good things here, and we've got to keep moving forward, and there's no point in dwelling on it. But the pain is real, I spend, things can knock me right off my feet. I spend a lot of my time feeling that hopelessness of I can't do enough. It took me a long time to realize that I'd never stop feeling that. There will never be a time in my life where I think, now I've done it. Now I've done enough. Now I've achieved. Because even if, let's imagine, I wish this could happen, but let's imagine that we save the lion as a species just from this mountain climb. It's not going to happen. We can help. It's all one tiny part of a much, much bigger puzzle. But even if we did that, well, then we move on to the next species.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The next country, the next issue. And they're uncountable. In every country, on every continent, every species is being exploited, harmed, eaten, tested on, locked up. What you name it, there's plenty of lifetimes worth of work to do.
Yeah.
And so when I say it's a blessing and a curse, it's a curse because the pain does come with it, and there's days where it really hurts, and I know you guys know that, and anyone who cares about animals does, because it's kind of a tough world to live in sometimes if you love animals as deeply as we do, because you don't have to look very far to see exploitation and pain and suffering. Exactly. We're surrounded by it. Go into a supermarket and see how many products aren't based on animals.
Yeah.
We're surrounded by it. But at the same time, it's a blessing because I will not ever stop. It's every single day of my life. I'm inspired and motivated and determined to get up and do something and make a difference, because there's a fire burning inside me, and it comes from that love of animals.
Yeah.
That's what it's about.
Yeah, it is fantastic. I really get the pain side of it. So I think a couple of weeks ago, we interviewed Emma Hurst, who is the MP for the Animal Justice Party in Sydney. And during the talk, she mentioned about trying to get a ban on crush videos. I didn't at that stage, don't know how it was. I didn't understand what it was. And then Anchor told me what these things were. And the pain that still goes through with me from knowing about that is just horrendous. And yeah, that actually has kept me up at night quite a few times lately. Yeah.
It's exactly that. You do lose sleep over it. It's a cliche, isn't it? But there's a reason why that phrase exists, because you actually can lose sleep over these things. And I had it the other night, and I have it, probably 3 or 4 times a year, because you can't let it in all the time, because you would go insane.
Yeah,
you'd be a blubbering wreck. You wouldn't achieve anything, so like I say, it's a blessing and a curse in the sense that it really does hurt and it can keep you awake, but it's that same pain that motivates you and makes you so absolutely determined. I've had this conversation like to a really extreme level with people where I've even said, and I think this is something you'll be able to relate to, you guys, I'm sure, is that even if someone was able to offer you a crystal ball and say, hey, look, I can actually show you the future, and I hate to tell you this, guys, but you lose. There's always a problem. There's always exploitation. There's always cruelty. There's always people wearing fur coats. Whatever it is you're fighting against, wouldn't change a thing. We'd still fight for the rest of our lives. Wouldn't change a damn thing.
Never stop.
And it's on principle. There's nothing else I want to do in this world. I want to fight for the right of these animals that can't fight for their own rights. It's so even if I knew I lost the battle in the end, that wouldn't be a life wasted. I'd dedicate my life to it still. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So we ask all of our guests a couple of questions at the end of them, and we've covered a little bit just in the last things we were talking about. But understanding the climate emergency, what keeps you up at night?
It's kind of what we've discussed earlier on in the context of COVID-19, in so much as here's this unprecedented thing that's just happened, which I think you guys and myself and many, many others, when it started out, of course, it's terrible, and we wish no ill will upon anybody, but there was the positive aspect in our brain was saying, but this could be the turning point. Yeah. This could be the thing that wakes people up. What keeps me up at night is the fact that it didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I'm so cautious about saying that, especially in a public forum, because of the fact that it sounds really pessimistic. But something else will come along. That's the way nature works. Something will come along. It's whether it's another pandemic or it's an asteroid or anything else.
Yeah.
Something will come along to wake us up out of this slumber. I say that us, like collectively, human beings. And it's immeasurable. How do we know? There might be millions of people waking up because of this, but we just haven't heard from them. We're not seeing them. But what I do see, like the litter all over Bournemouth Beach, or like the litter in Richmond Park, or the way that people are just trashing nature, and the way that I fear they cannot wait to get back to not just normal, but a new normal, which is even less compassionate, even more careless.
Yeah.
That's what keeps me up at night right now, because I swear to God, I thought this was going to do it. I thought this was going to shake people up, and they'd be like, oh my God, we can't do this anymore. And then you hear that, I think it was Norway or wherever it was, that they slaughtered 16 million mink.
Yeah.
Not because of the fact that, and the story wasn't, oh my God, we've just become aware of our insanity. How can we be so wasteful and selfish? It was, oh, this business has lost all 16 million mink. That's like its annual revenue down the drain. It's like, what?
Exactly.
We're so disconnected. We live in a very divided world right now. We're so polarized. That's why food for thought is food for thought, not go vegan, you sons of bitches. It's you know what I mean? It's like we live in a very polarized world, whether it's Brexit or Trump or whatever it is you care to mention. Even the pandemic. There's the people who are anti-lockdown, or you pick a subject, everyone's divided, and until we stop, I don't know what to do about that really, because other than to just carry on doing what we do, which is through all of that mess, we just have got to keep on focusing on love and compassion for animals and trying to make the world a better place for them. Because I don't think, I suppose you could say that helps the whole, because I've always thought very strongly that compassion isn't species specific. If I can teach a kid to be compassionate about squirrels or lions or anything, don't squash spiders, put them out on a piece of paper. And if I can teach compassion or inspire compassion how's that kid going to be lacking compassion for humans or anything else? So everyone wins. And so I suppose that that's where the greats in the past have said things like, Gandhi's beautiful quote about "be the change you wish to see in the world." That's all we can do. He was right, and I guess that's all we can do. But it is what keeps me up at night. It's one of the things that gives me that pain, but likewise gives me that determination to just keep fighting even harder.
Absolutely.
I think people don't. Sorry, I think people don't understand that compassion for animals also means compassion for humans, because where animals thrive, we will thrive too. we can see that the animals are, disappearing faster and faster, and our world is getting worse. So when our oceans thrive, we will thrive. And there's that massive disconnect between us and them. It's not us and them, it's us all together.
Anchor, I couldn't agree more wholeheartedly with you. And it's, it's such an important point. And on any level that you can discuss it with people, if there's any receptiveness to it, I think it's such an important conversation to have. And I know that, the more we kind of teetered on the edge of fluffy spiritual stuff earlier when I was talking about the universe. And this is a similar example of that, where you could go all the way to we are all one. We're all part of the same energy. We're all,
yep.
we could go to that extent on that spiritual level, for want of a better expression. But even on a tangible, measurable, scientific level, it's so clear. It's been proven. It's been shown over and over again. And thankfully you have lot more and more high profile people stepping up, and people like Attenborough, who has finally in the last few years started to say, we need to do something. He's got the respect that he's garnered over his lifetime. And now he's stepping up and saying, something's got to give. We've got to start taking care of this planet. And, we can show scientifically that, as you just described, Anka, if the ocean's healthy, so are we. If it's not, if it dies, so do we.
Yeah.
And that's an ecosystem. And it's one of the greatest mysteries to me is how we could think anything else is true, because ironically, sadly, if you want to see the healthiest of any ecosystem, you just got to find one that man hasn't touched.
Yeah,
exactly that.
All this stuff that we do, wherever we plunder, wherever we, even when people think they're managing an environment, we're making a mess of it.
Mm-hmm.
The single best, most powerful thing that we can do for nature is leave it alone. Just leave it alone. And I realize, of course, that's like shutting the door after the horse is bolted. We're in a position now where some of it needs managing. We talked about Africa and conservation areas. You can't just leave it to its own devices. You have to manage it in some way. And then you have things like carrying capacity to talk about, where if you're successful, you might have too many animals that the land can't physically sustain anymore, and things like that. Of course, it needs managing, but any place where we've just kept our filthy hands off it, it's doing great.
Yeah.
And the really, really embarrassing thing is, and this is where I get really, anytime I get into a conversation with someone who doesn't agree with this stuff, I kind of just I've got a trump card up my sleeve. I wish the word trump card needs to be changed, because I don't want to even use the word trump.
It's a shame. It's been ruined now, isn't it?
It's ruined. It's ruined. But we have this self-proclaimed status as the world's the most intelligent species, and ironically, I don't know what kind of intelligence entails destroying your planet's ability to sustain your existence, but I don't consider that terribly intelligent, and it certainly isn't emotionally intelligent. But the key thing is that I find really a powerful argument ender when people want to refer to what we do as progress or evolution or development or part of nature. I want an answer to one simple question, which is, if we're so intelligent and if we're so great, how come every single thing on this planet would benefit from our disappearance?
Yeah.
Everything, every living organism would benefit from our disappearance.
Yeah.
That's such an awful reality, but it's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
If that's the case, surely something's got to change, and surely we're not that intelligent either.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know.
A little while ago, I saw a documentary about Chernobyl and the land, and the area, how it's been left alone, and all the people have left, and the land is thriving. The land is taking away all the concrete, it's breaking it up. Yeah. All the houses, and the land's just coming back. Nature's coming back. Obviously, there's still contaminants there and stuff like that, but it was a quick show in a short space of time from, was it 86? I forget. From when it happened to now, and how much nature has reclaimed that bit of land. Yeah,
exactly. And it will be true anywhere.
Yeah.
If we just left places alone. I find a lot of what we talk about lions and, iconic species, but there's also, it's as important to me. As I said, compassion is not species specific. So it's as important to me that the squirrels that come visit me on my balcony here, and which are considered by many a pest, a vermin, are protected as well. And the reason why, because this, and people argue it until they're blue in the face. They'll say, but the grey squirrel is disgusting. It kills the red squirrel and it destroys trees and it'll eat eggs and this. I'm like, well, that's what squirrels do. And they didn't book a boat from the States to the UK. They're just being squirrels. Yeah. Same with the parakeets. I think it's about 30 years ago now, someone, I'm not sure they even know how it happened initially, but presumably someone released a couple of captive parakeets and they bred like rabbits. And now we have thousands and thousands of them all the way up the Thames estuary, including on my balcony. And they're gorgeous. They're just parakeets. They get on with their day and they're just being parakeets. And yeah, they aren't a native species, and they are probably a threat to some that are, but it's not their fault.
Yeah.
And that's what we humans do. We are so quick to label something that's inconvenient, a vermin or a pest, like the fox, the whole fox hunting now here, which is so vile. Yeah. And the whole conversation is just like, well, have you ever seen what foxes do to a chicken coop? Well, what do you expect when you put a prey animal on a predator's environment and it has to adapt? It's got no choice. It's not doing it to piss you off. It's a fox. It's trying to survive, and it kills more than one chicken because it's going to come back and get the rest. But no one wants to have that conversation. Of course, they only want to protect the chicken so they can kill it and eat it themselves anyway.
Yeah.
Exactly so. Yeah.
Yeah, the ultimate irony. Yeah. So it's we're pretty bad at that. And I'm just, for me, it's all about every single species. And I've just gone off on such a tangent. I can't even remember what your question was.
It doesn't matter. It's all good. So what aspects make you optimistic for the future?
I think more than anything, it's seeing the younger generations. There's a lot of reverse education happening. We talked about recycling. A lot of recycling happens, even though it's not enough. It happens because kids have come home from school and said to their parents, oh, we need to recycle. We learned about recycling. We need to recycle. A lot of that's happened. And what I think is really, really lovely is the fact that more and more you're seeing, I think, for example, the reason veganism is exploding the way it is because youngsters are doing it. Yeah. Older generations are far less likely to be vegan. Younger generations are much more likely. And it's not a trend. It's not a fad. It's clearly way past that point.
Yeah.
So what gives me hope for the future is the younger generations who seem to care. And I'm surrounded by some incredible ones like Bella Lack. You might have heard of. She's one of Born Free's patrons as well. I think she's about 17 or 18 now, but since she's been about 13 or 14, she's been an incredible spokesperson for animal rights, the environment, animal welfare, conservation. So articulate, so gentle in her approach. She's like an angel, and she's been doing it since she was 13 or 14. And there's many examples of that. And you know, like I've been invited to speak to schools, and there's lots of schools are now including in the curriculum things about conservation or about recycling or about plastic pollution. And the awareness is at an all-time high, and we can build on that momentum. And with it being the younger generations, who I think we have the benefit of something else, which is again sort of talking on a more universal level. I don't believe that there's a child born into this world with a lack of compassion for other people or beings. I think it's taught into them or knocked out of them, so to speak. It's they're poisoned. They grow up in a toxic environment which makes them think that it's okay to, and sometimes it's not even deliberate. Sometimes I grew up in a very loving household, but before I was old enough to make any conscious decisions for myself, someone was putting food in my mouth, and that food was animal based. So how could I then grow up thinking anything other than that's normal? So there's conditioning taking place as well as more sort of malicious pollution of young minds. But I think a young mind is inherently compassionate, loving, kind, wouldn't want to harm an animal, wouldn't see an animal and think, oh, that'd be fun to shoot. Mm-hmm. Something goes wrong along the way for them to start thinking that way. So if the younger generations are coming through and that inherent compassion and kindness and empathy is nurtured, I've got great hope for the future. And there better be hope. You know, there needs to be something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And finally, if there is one thing we can all change that will have a massive impact on the health of our planet, what would that be? How can we be good?
I see. That's an easy one. Come climb a mountain. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that it's we already talked about it. It's just reduce your meat consumption.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of people still consider that to be quite stigmatized. I know that a lot of people just really scoff at the idea. I encourage you to just try something. Reduce your meat consumption or completely cut it out. See how you feel, because it will speak for itself. I don't have to convince anyone of anything. In our film, one of the things that we did was we invited a group of non-vegans to try a 30-day vegan challenge. And what's one of the loveliest things about the film is that at the end of and we have them all document it on their smartphones. And at the end of the 30 days, they're saying, well, you know, I'm at 30 days, and we were just watching it in the edit the other day, and one of the guys is saying, I'm meeting a mate tomorrow. This is before lockdown. Meeting a mate tomorrow, and I thought I'd have a big blowout. You know, I was really excited about going and eating whatever I wanted. And he said, I don't think I'm going to. He said, and one of the other guys comes on and says, yeah, I'm going to stay vegan. And he looks at the camera and goes, you knew this was going to happen, didn't you? Deliberately. And we didn't do it deliberately. We just wanted people to let the benefits speak for themselves. And they did. And a lot of people, the vast majority of people, in fact, who try veganism stay vegan.
Mm.
People will feel better. They'll look better. They'll have more energy. Numerous ailments can be reversed or certainly improved upon with taking meat and dairy out of your diet, and it will have the biggest impact by far on the health of our planet. So give it a try.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. We have taken a lot of your time, but it's been an absolute pleasure.
Goodness me, sorry to interrupt. You know, I should be thanking you. I mean, it's been an absolute honor to be on, and I'm so grateful to you guys for doing what you're doing. This is exactly what we're talking about, you know, today, the importance of spreading this message and just being the change. And you guys you're exemplary, and you're indicative of exactly what I was talking about. And I think it's beautiful. And I'm so honored to be on your podcast. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. It's been a delight.